Through no fault of his own, Filip Chytil is coming off of a very challenging season. Today we discuss why he's the Rangers' ultimate X factor for 2024-2025, plus some thoughts on the upcoming NHL 25 video game.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1131 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And so we're going to go ahead, continue with our fun-filled off-season series. We do this every single off-season. The everydayers will certainly be very familiar with it. Basically, we take a look at what we project to be the Rangers opening night roster, and we point the spotlight at every single player that we think will make up said roster. And today, we're moving along on the third line here to third line center, and that is going to be Filip Chytil. And, for the most part, when we do these, I don't bother telling you guys, well, in a worst case scenario, he'll get hurt. In a best case scenario, he'll get healthy. That's pretty much self-explanatory. But with Filip Chytil, this is unavoidable because this is basically going to be the story of his season. And I think in a worst case scenario, it's pretty obvious where I'm going with this. He will continue to have issues with concussions, and that's obviously through zero fault of his own. It's an unfortunate hand that he's been dealt over the past couple of years here, but facts are facts. He has suffered from concussion issues, and we obviously hope that that no longer continues to be the case, but it's also possible that that is a storyline that will continue to follow him throughout this upcoming season, throughout really the rest of his entire NHL career. That's just kind of the nature of the beast when you're talking about concussions here, which can obviously be very unpredictable and very volatile. And let me just say that Filip Chytil, his health, his happiness, his safety, all that stuff comes way before hockey, Ranger hockey, whatever it might be. Filip Chytil, if he's going to play this year, he has to be comfortable with it, and the doctors have to be comfortable with it, and they have to give him his blessing. Obviously, I'm no concussion expert or anything like that, so I defer to the people that know best, and that would obviously be the doctors. They have to give Filip Chytil the thumbs up and the all clear to go ahead and keep playing hockey. But it sounds like right now, per a couple of different reports, that Filip Chytil is expected to be a full participant in training camp. So that's obviously very good news, But it is worth, mentioning here that concussions are obviously a very serious thing. And there are times where this has gotten very scary when it comes to Filip Chytil. And last season, certainly no shortage of adversity for Filip Chytil to try to overcome. There was that situation. To begin with, played 10 games to start the season, got the concussion, out for months. He's starting to work his way back. He's out there for a skate. It was just Chytil and Zach Jones and Jake Leschyshyn that were on the rink at this time. Those are the three players that were going to be scratched for that evening's game. I forget who the Rangers were playing, but that's not really important right now. Bottom line, it's three Rangers out there on the rink. There's no physicality. There's nothing really happening. They're basically just skating around. And before you know it, Filip Chytil is down on the ice, and Jones and Leschyshyn both had to help him off of the ice. And, here we go again with the concussions. And again, it's through obviously no fault of Filip Chytil, but that is very scary. That's just a skate around. What's going to happen when you're out there playing actual hockey and you have opponents and they're all looking to hit you, not in a malicious way like, oh, let's target Chytil's head. Anybody that does that is sick. But, it's hockey. It's physical, and people are going to get knocked around and bumped around out there. So obviously, that was a very scary situation there. And in a worst case scenario, obviously, concussions will continue to be an issue for Filip Chytil in one way or another going forward, including in this way. It's kind of a continuation of what we just said. But in a worst case scenario, Filip Chytil plays some tentative hockey this upcoming season due to the concussion issues, at least early in the season. Maybe he's playing a little bit tentative out there. And, it's interesting because certain players in the Rangers, if they don't want to stick their nose in there, or they don't want to go to the dirty parts of the rink, or they don't want to really fight for the puck, or, get to the net, power their way to the net, take a big hit when they have to take a big hit. There's times where we might get on players like that. I'm not going to get on Filip Chytil for anything he does this season because, again, he's dealing with a really unfortunately lengthy and serious history of concussion issues here. And that being the case, I think, Chytil, especially early in the season, he gets a free pass from me. He should be getting a free pass, I think, from just about every Ranger fan everywhere. But facts are facts. The concussions have been there, and it's possible. I mean, I can't speak for Filip Chytil. Maybe he's braver than me. But if I've had, a whole bunch of concussions early in my career, and I've had to deal with the physical side of it and the mental side of it, just the mental anguish of just not knowing, am I going to be able to keep playing hockey? Am I going to get back out there? When will the doctors clear me? Am I risking my long-term health? All those things going on inside Filip Chytil's head. That's obviously something that can weigh on somebody a little bit. And I think if you're out there after all these concussions, it's at least possible that you might play, somewhat tentative hockey, especially at the start of the season. I think also in a worst case scenario, Filip Chytil suffers from some rustiness, and this one's pretty self-explanatory. Bottom line, Filip Chytil only played a grand total of 10 regular season games last year, and then he got back in the playoffs, ended up playing 6 postseason games for the Rangers as well. But that's obviously not a lot. And I think if you're in a situation, if you're the Rangers, and the doctors give Filip Chytil the all clear, and he's ready to go for the season, I think it's probably in your best interest to make sure that Filip Chytil gets a healthy dose of preseason games. Rangers play 6 preseason games. Look, if it's somebody like Mika or Kreider or Fox or Panarin, one of those guys, I don't think those guys need more than 3 preseason games. But bottom line, Filip Chytil didn't play a whole lot last year, so I think it's a good idea for the Rangers to get him out there for 4 or 5 preseason games and make sure he gets his legs under him. He's probably, if he's healthy, he'll start the season as the Ranger third-line center, and you got to figure he'll probably be centering Will Cooley and Kaapo Kakko. Now, Kakko, obviously, there's some history there. We remember the kid line. Chytil and Kakko seem to have good chemistry together. Chytil's never really played with Will Cooley, at least not extensively, though. So I think it makes sense to get him out there, get people on his line that you think are going to be playing with him during the regular season, and just take it from there. Now, on the other hand, you might hear that and think well, concussion history, preseason games, do you really want to push it? I think, though, and I get what you're saying if you do have that viewpoint, but I think it's going to be one extreme or the other. Either Filip Chytil is going to be completely clear and completely ready to go, or he's not going to be cleared at all, and he's not going to be allowed to play. I think it's going to be one extreme or the other, and that being the case, I think it's, again, a good idea for the Rangers to get him out there into the preseason and shake off the rustiness and reestablish that chemistry with Kaapo Kakko, and in the case of Will Cooley, start to build that chemistry with Will Cooley, who's entering now his second season with the Rangers. So we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second, shift our attention to the good stuff, the fun stuff, the best case scenarios for Filip Chytil for this upcoming season. Also going to be having some thoughts on the forthcoming NHL 25 video game, and we're going to get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. Now, with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, we just want to give a big thanks to everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's go ahead, shift our attention to the best case scenarios for Filip Chytil, the fun stuff, the good stuff. I think in a best case scenario, we seldom, if ever, hear about Filip Chytil's concussion issues ever again. Now, at the start of this upcoming season, it's going to be somewhat unavoidable, because whether you're listening to this podcast or whether you're listening to any of the other fine New York Ranger podcasts that are available out there, or you're reading from this beat writer or that beat writer, or even just fan talk, social media talk, whatever it might be, anytime Filip Chytil's name comes up early in, the preseason for sure, certainly the regular season as well, there's going to be some focus, and understandably so, on his concussion history. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. That's obviously something that is a major storyline heading into the season, especially as it pertains to Filip Chytil. But in a best case scenario, all this talk quickly becomes a thing of the past. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to worry about it anymore throughout the rest of Filip Chytil's career. Now, on one hand, maybe that seems a little bit unrealistic, but on the other hand, concussions can be very unpredictable. As I said, very volatile. And, you take an example. We'll use kind of an extreme example here, especially for a Ranger podcast. Take a look at Sidney Crosby. Now, I realize none of us are exactly fans of the Sidney Crosby, or rather the presidents of the Sidney Crosby fan club. So I understand that. But certainly we don't wish injury on anybody. And what Sidney Crosby went through early in his career was pretty scary. The career, possibly career-threatening concussions were piling up at a pretty alarming rate. And he was, suffering from that, missed some time, obviously, due to the concussions. And lo and behold, he's obviously gone on to a very long and obviously very successful career. And so good for him for obviously being able to overcome that. But when it comes to Crosby, the reason for me bringing this up, when's the last time that we've really talked about Sidney Crosby and his concussion issues? I think the last time was a couple of seasons ago in the playoffs. Trouba and Crosby had that collision. Crosby went down, missed the rest of Game 5, also missed Game 6, came back for Game 7. But for the most part, anything having to do with Crosby and concussions, that talk has all been on the back burner, and he's obviously overcome it. Maybe something similar can happen for Filip Chytil. Maybe there's a situation where, 5-10 years down the road here, we're looking back and we look at Filip Chytil and we think like, man, he hasn't had a concussion in a really long time. And that's really become kind of a non-factor and a non-issue. Again, I don't know. I can't possibly put a percentage on this because you just never know when you're dealing with concussions. Certainly, I don't know anything, about that other than the fact that they're obviously very scary. But in a best case scenario, at a certain point, yeah, I mean, it just becomes kind of an afterthought and something that, it's not at the forefront of anybody's mind when it comes to Filip Chytil. We get to talk about Filip Chytil, he should be on a line with this guy, or we should do this, or we should move him to wing, or maybe Filip Chytil needs more time in the power play, whatever it might be. Hopefully, at a certain point, talking Filip Chytil from a hockey perspective kind of overtakes talking about Filip Chytil from, his concussion history. And right now, I understand people talking about the concussions because obviously he suffered a lot of them, and it's a scary situation. And it's what makes Filip Chytil, frankly, such an X factor for this upcoming season for the Rangers. It's just the fact that we just don't know what it's going to be when it comes to his concussions. I think also in a best case scenario, this is a fun one. This is a more lighthearted one. Get away from the concussion talk. It's kind of depressing, talking about all the concussion history with Filip Chytil, but obviously it's unavoidable. It's part of his story so far in the NHL. But a more fun one, a more lighthearted one, a moment that I think we're all going to enjoy, Ranger fans everywhere. I mean, if you don't enjoy this, check your pulse. But I think in the best case scenario, his first goal of the season happens at Madison Square Garden. Now, look, it's going to be awesome whenever Filip Chytil gets his first goal. Rangers open the season on the road against Pittsburgh. Hey, if he scores that night, that's awesome. If he scores the game-winning goal, even better. That would be amazing. I don't think we're going to be too picky when it comes to this. But regardless of when he scores his first goal of the season, the first goal that he scores at Madison Square Garden, you better hang on to the roof for that place, because that place is going to explode. Ranger fans, we clash every now and then, right? Everybody has a different opinion on this player or that player, but one thing that I think Ranger fans, for the most part, really have in common is this is a fan base. It's very, very plugged into this team. We know, we're not just fixated on the best 3 or 4 players in the Rangers. We know the depth chart inside and out. We know all the prospects inside and out. We know who's coming along and who could be a factor, later this season as a call-up from the AHL, whatever the situation might be. And certainly, we're all very, very much aware of everything that Filip Chytil has gone through throughout really the course of his career, but certainly this past season, the one that just concluded a couple of months back. And that being the case, when Filip Chytil gets that first goal, that's going to be a moment at Madison Square Garden. And, I don't think they're going to stop the game or anything like that for him, but I could see a situation where, maybe during a TV timeout, you could see the Filip Chytil, those chants kind of building throughout Madison Square Garden. There's got to be some kind of a moment for Chytil whenever that goal is scored. And maybe you get a situation where, again, during a TV timeout, crowd's chanting his name, he stands up, raises his stick, waves to the fans, whatever it might be. There's got to be at least something that happens there, because keep in mind, when he scores, I mean, all the adversity is one thing, but it'll be his first goal in about a year and a half, calendar wise, since his last goal, because Chytil didn't score any goals last season in the playoffs or in the regular season. So that's going to be a moment when that does happen. And I think Ranger fans everywhere, it's hard to get every single Ranger fan on the planet to agree on one thing, but I think one thing we can all agree on, that's going to be an awesome moment, and we're all going to be thrilled for Filip Chytil whenever that does happen this season. I think also in a best case scenario, you'll see a situation where Filip Chytil is the NHL's comeback player of the year. Now, the NHL doesn't really have that award per se, but they have something very similar, and that is the Bill Masterson Trophy. And to read the description of the trophy from the website, the Bill Masterson Memorial Trophy is awarded annually to the National Hockey League player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. And then it goes on to say it is often awarded to a player who has come back from a career or even life-threatening illness or injury. And for starters, I should explain the way this whole thing works. So every team in the NHL, all 32 teams, will nominate one of their own players for this award. I think it's a layup, it's a slam dunk, it's a shoo-in. Filip Chytil will be the Ranger nominee for this upcoming season for this award, given everything that he's gone through. And frankly, when you think about it, I don't want there to be any other Ranger that's even in consideration for this award. First of all, because Filip Chytil has obviously gone through a lot of adversity, but for another Ranger to even gain consideration as possibly being the team's nominee for this award, something bad's going to have to happen to them. I don't want that to happen. So Filip Chytil, let's kind of pencil him in right now, at least as the Ranger nominee for this award. As far as winning it, I mean, look, he's going to be coming back from a pretty serious concussion history here. And if he has any kind of a productive season, and possibly even if not, he's going to be a strong candidate to win that award. Just the fact that he's gone through all these concussion injuries and had to deal with all this and gotten back out there. And if he gets back to the level that he was at 2 years ago when he had 45 points, if he gets back to that level or even eclipses it, yeah, he's going to be a strong, candidate to win this award from the NHL when it's all said and done for this upcoming season. So we'll definitely look forward to the possibility of him doing that. First of all, it's awesome just from a life perspective. Filip Chytil is a human being after all, and it'd be great to see him win an award like this, see him get recognized for his perseverance. But if he does win this award, then you got to figure he's out there, he's playing, and he's contributing to the Rangers in a meaningful way, and that's obviously a good thing for the Rangers from a hockey perspective as well. So let me just say, man, we'll shift our attention to the NHL video game. That's going to be quite the transition there. But Filip Chytil is a great kid by all accounts. 24 years old. He doesn't deserve what's happened to him. All these concussions, nobody deserves that. And especially with somebody with such a promising career in front of him, you don't want to see him riddled with concussions. And I just hope he can get back and be the player that he was, before this all happened last season. And let me just say, all the best to Filip Chytil. I think, again, you can't get Ranger fans to agree universally on any one thing, except for maybe this, that we're all pulling for Filip Chytil this year, and we want to see him have an awesome season for the New York Rangers. But we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. Like I said, it's going to be quite the transition. We're going to be talking about the NHL 25 video game. The trailer dropped the other day. I'm going to be talking about, just some things that I'd like to see from the game, and just kind of, just general things about the game that I think might be cool and whatnot. So we will get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by our very good friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sports book. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Figure we can close out today by talking a little bit about the forthcoming NHL 25 video game. It's going to be the 34th installment of this franchise, if you can even possibly believe that. But they dropped, EA did, EA Sports, they dropped the NHL video game trailer the other day. It wasn't really anything special. The trailer I'm talking about, no guarantees that means the game is going to be great or not so great or whatever it's going to be. But, the trailer didn't have a whole lot. It was just a very brief look at some of the gameplay. And maybe that's the idea. Maybe they want, potential buyers to still have some questions and still kind of be wondering, you leave them wanting more. And maybe when it gets closer to the release date, EA Sports will release, a more detailed video. We'll see how they look to play it. But the cover athletes plural, for this upcoming season, it looks like it's going to be the Hughes brothers. You got Jack, Quinn, and Luke. I mean, do we really need two Devils on the cover of the same video game? Like that's a little bit overkill, isn't it? No, but in all seriousness, I do think that's actually a good pick. It can't be Crosby and Ovechkin from now until the end of time. You've got to get, a younger group of hockey fans into hockey by, showcasing and fixating on some of the younger players, some of the young, exciting players in this league. And certainly the Hughes brothers all qualify there. Apparently, all three Hughes brothers were also somewhat involved in the development of this game. They weren't doing like the IT techie stuff or anything like that. But what they do is they put them on a rink and they give them these full body like outfits to wear, and they've got like sensors all over it, so they can go out there and they can take shots and they can pass amongst themselves and make all these moves. And the outfit that they're wearing tracks all their movement, so the EA developers can then take what they're doing in real life on a rink and put it into a hockey game. That's pretty awesome. That adds a level of authenticity to the game, and very cool that the Hughes brothers were willing to do that. My understanding is last year they had EA Sports employees doing this, which, I mean, okay, that's better than nothing. And certainly I'm sure there's some people working on the game that played hockey and probably played in some cases at a fairly high competitive level. But man, you go from that to the three Hughes brothers out there doing what they do on the ice. I think you're going to step up in the player animations due to that being a case. As far as features in the game that I would like to see, give me the Olympics. I got to have the Olympics in this game. Now, as is always the case with things like this, there could be some fine print and there could be some kind of a rights deal. Maybe the Olympics says, no, you're not allowed to put our stuff into a video game. I mean, I don't know. You never know how this stuff is going to work one way or the other. But if you have to dance around it, just call it something different than that. Call it like the World Championship awesomeness of hockey. It doesn't matter. Just come up with some kind of a name for it. It's the Olympics. We all know it's the Olympics. International competition, blah, blah, blah. The name isn't really important, but you put it in there, you use the same format that the Olympics uses. Obviously, players of certain nationalities can only play for their country, and you can play out Olympic hockey to your heart's content in the new version of the NHL video game. I think also the World Juniors would be a lot of fun, although there, you're dealing with, in some cases, some players that haven't been drafted. So I'm not sure how that would work or if that would, translate to the video game. Be a pro. This is a feature that the NHL game has had for several seasons now, which is awesome. Basically what it is, you create a player and then you get to choose, what position you play and your attributes and all that good stuff. And you start in junior hockey. You might be in the OHL for the Halifax Mooseheads or whatever it might be. And you advance throughout your career. You move up to the AHL, you move up to the NHL. And it's cool because you only play the game when your player is on the ice. It simulates the rest of the game, and that kind of keeps things moving. And you can get through an 82 game regular season a lot faster than you might otherwise be able to. So that's obviously a cool feature. But I want them to take it a step beyond that. I want a mode where you can basically do what I just said, but you choose to take over the career of a current NHL player. And as Rainier fans, a name that kind of pops into mind for me is Alexis Lafreniere, because Lafreniere, 22 years old, had his breakout season last year, seems to certainly be moving in the right direction and developing into the player that we all hoped and thought that he would be. So you take over in this hypothetical NHL 25 game mode, you take over the career of Alexis Lafreniere, and you play this upcoming season with the Rangers, and you play the following season with the Rangers. And, oh, hey, now unrestricted free agency. What do I want to do? Do I want to re-sign with the Rangers? Do I want to go somewhere else? Whatever it might be. You could do the opposite of that. You could take, say, like Joe Thornton. I know he's retired now, but you could take like 44-year-old Joe Thornton, bring him out of retirement and sign on with this team or with that team and try to win a Stanley Cup with mid-40s Joe Thornton. I just think that could be a lot of fun to have a feature like that in the game where you can take over the career of any NHL player that you so desire to do. You could take even like somebody in the AHL that's just trying to crack an NHL roster. That could be a lot of fun as well. Could be really cool. You could You could have maybe you have a favorite player from around the league that you really like that you'd like to see be on the Rangers, and you sign with the Rangers in free agency and you join the current team. There's a whole bunch of possibilities you could do with that, and I think it could be a lot of fun. I think also something else I would like to see. So the Madden franchise, that's obviously, the NFL game that's been around for like 3 decades now, or however long it's been, probably even longer than that at this point. But they used to have something called Madden Moments, where you would take over, a famous situation in a game, like I don't know. Okay, it's a New York podcast. Let's say the Super Bowl, the Giants beat the undefeated Patriots. You take over, you do that drive. You're Eli Manning and you're in control of the offense, and you have to go 80 yards or whatever it was to score a touchdown and beat the undefeated Patriots. That's what they would do in Madden. Do something like that in the NHL as well. For Ranger fans, how about 94 Eastern Conference Final, Game 7? The game starts, you're already in overtime, and you have to find a way not just to score the game-winning goal, but to do it with Stephon Matteau. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be a wraparound, but you have to score with Stephon Matteau. Maybe you get the Howie Rose audio plays over the game while that happens. There's so many possibilities here. If you want a more modern example, Patrick Kane in overtime in Game 6 against the Flyers. You could do like 2013 Bruins Leafs Game 7. The Bruins were down 4-1 in that game with like less than 11 minutes left. And you, as the Bruins, have to score 3 times, force the game to overtime, win it in overtime, things like that, where you take over. And there's countless other examples that I'm sure you could all come up with, but you take over a team or a player in a famous spot in NHL history, and you go out and you do it yourself, or you reenact it. You could have a situation where if there's Devils fans out there and you want them to win the 1994 Eastern Conference Final, you put them in overtime and you have them try to do that. Again, endless possibilities for something like this. I think also a feature that needs to be more prominent: create your own team, create your own team logo, create your own jerseys, create your own arena, move a current team to a different city, whatever it might be. These used to be staples of sports games, and in recent years, it's kind of been downplayed or in some cases eliminated altogether. So I'd love to see that make a return as well. And the soundtrack. We need a banging soundtrack for this game for sure. Everybody's music tastes are obviously going to be a little bit different, but if anybody saw the trailer, you would definitely notice the trailer that EA released. The song that was playing was Bro Him by Pennywise, which is just an awesome song. I think it perfectly fits the look and the feel of a sports video game. It's just one of those songs, like when it comes on, if you're listening to music and that song comes on, you have to turn the volume up. That's the kind of music you want in a sports video game. It doesn't really matter the genre, but you just need songs that are like, let's go, let's do this, let's play some hockey, let's have some fun. And I think that's a great choice to be in the game. We'll see what happens when the rest of the soundtrack is released, what other artists, what other songs are in the game. Definitely looking forward to that. Player ratings are not out yet. That's always a lot of fun. Anytime a new sports game comes out, oh man, how is this guy a 92 and this guy over here is only a 90? It gets fans talking a little bit, and I think that'll be a lot of fun once the player ratings drop for this NHL game. Maybe in the future, depending on what the Rangers are doing when this happens, we'll talk about the Ranger ratings, who's ranked a little too high, who's ranked a little too low, et cetera, et cetera. Just make it fun. For the gameplay, I kind of, with hockey games, I like it to be a little bit on the arcadey side. Don't go too nuts with it. Don't make it too cartoony. But I want like amplified hits. I want amplified one-timers. I want, goalies sitting on their heads, making all these ridiculous saves. That I think makes the game the most fun. And hopefully it's a good game, and I'll see about buying it. Unfortunately, I don't have the PS5 yet, and it's not going to be available on the PS4. So we'll see. You guys let me know how the game is when it comes out. But I figure we could pretty much call it there. I did want to mention a couple of things really quickly here. The Fantasy League, if you played last year, get back in touch with me. Let me know you're going to be back for this year. We will save your spot. That's all you got to do. If you did not play last year, do the same thing. Get in touch with me. We'll save your spot in line. And sooner or later, we're going to replace, owners from last year who haven't responded with the players that are, have gotten in touch with me and are raring to go for this upcoming season. We'll eventually set a cutoff date for that. Also, overtime stories. I want to hear them. Where you guys were, where you guys were. Yeah, there we go. Who you were with, how you reacted when the Rangers scored any of their 4 playoff overtime game winners from this past season. We've done things like this in the past. It's always a lot of fun. And in a future episode, I've heard back from some of you guys already, but in a future episode, we'll go ahead and read your stories on an episode of Locked On New York Rangers. So figure we could pretty much call it there. That will do it for today, guys. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.